Good evening. I'm Selwyn Collins, your host of CWS Conversations with Selwyn. Thank you once again for joining with us for another evening of broadcast. Today is a very special day for a number of reasons. One of my best friend, John Quinton, celebrates his birthday today. Today is also my birthday. But I could not postpone the show because for two reasons. One, the show must go on. But more importantly, gem of our soil, Mason Richard, is our guest tonight. But before I introduce you to Mason Richard, I would like to spend some time speaking about the importance of having people in your life. Well, I call them angels. I had an experience today, a few days ago. When I'm not in this creative mode, when I am not writing, there's my technical side where I'm developing software and developing web applications sometimes. And I was working on a project, and for some reason I could not figure it out. I was stuck. There's a guy, his name is Raymond Camden. He's like a software guru in that sphere. And I thought of him. I said, Ray is probably the only person I can reach that can help me right now, but will he help me? But you know what? I didn't have much time to contemplate and procrastinate. I was desperate. And so I reached out to him by email. He responded within less than a minute. And we went back and forth. I was trying to explain to him via email what my problem was. It was very late at night, and then the next day we resumed. Eventually, I said, look, let's Skype each other. And we Skyped. We couldn't talk, I guess, because of where he was. But make a long story short, he took his time and helped me to solve my problem. Every now and then, people like Raymond Camden show up. And they show up like angels in our life, and we must acknowledge them. We must acknowledge that there are times, that there are people in our lives that will show up as benefactors, that will show up as angels in whatever format. And with that, I want to go into some of the people in my life that don't allow me to doubt myself. I talk about people like Claire Patterson Mona, who I've had an experience when I was thinking about doing the launch for my book, and I went to her with a certain proposal of what I want to do, and she gave me a certain look. But you see, that's my sister. Not blood, but that's my sister. And she gave me a certain look. Every time I talk about it, she laughs. And she said, no, that's not for you. Leave it up to me. But stay out the kitchen. And then there are people like my sister Roxanne Collins that does not allow me to use weak words and weak phrases like I don't have and you know I am looking for or there's lack. She would cut me to pieces. No, you always have. There is no such thing as lack. But you know, there are times when that spirit of lack or that spirit of pity comes upon us and wants us to sort of get pity from others. But my sister would not allow me to use weak terms. And then friends like John Quinton and Carl A. Gard that always, and Charles Mona, always make sure that I stay on top of things. Selwyn, you can do this, you can do that. So I'm saying all this. I'm calling these people like Rose October. You are good at what you do. Keep on doing it. Ian Hendricks, keep on doing what you're doing. You can do it. When you have people like that in your life that remind you what is important and remind you that you can, how can you fail? So I'm saying this to say that it is important to cultivate an arena of such people in your life. And also, the flip side, be that person for someone. So, once again, thank you for tuning in. And those who are tuning in for the first time, CWS is about having conversations with people about their journeys, how they're using their gifts and talents to help others to make a positive contribution to humanity. I'll take a break, and when we return, I'll introduce to you Mason Richards. Okay, we're back. For those of you who are now joining us, I am Selwyn Collins, your host on CWS. My guest tonight is Mason Richards. Mason, you're on live. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Selwyn. How are you?
I am wonderful. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for making an appearance on CWS. It's an honor to have you. I want to go right into it because there's so much for us to talk about tonight. I also want to take a little bit from your extract from your mini biography, right? Mason Richards, the recipient of 2012 Sony Pictures Diversity Fellowship, given to one promising young filmmaker with the potential to impact the film industry through diverse new films from a new perspective. Mason earned his MFA in film directing from Cal Arts, where he wrote and directed several narrative short films, including his thesis, The Sea Wall. Then it goes on to Mason's passion for the art starting in his teens, etc., etc. I don't want to do this. I want you to talk to us, because those who know you or have an idea of who you are may know certain facets of you. But I'm hoping that by the end of this conversation, we would have a multi-dimensional perspective of who Mason Richards is. So right. I want to ask you this question. You tell us, who are you? Who is Mason Richards?
Who am I?
Yes.
I think that's a question I've been trying to ask myself since I was a little boy in Guyana. Uh-huh. But I first want to say thank you for having me on your show. I really appreciate it, and I love the idea of having a conversation, right, as opposed to an interview. And so I'm really honored to be here. But who am I? There are a number of ways I describe myself, and I see myself as a son, an artist, a human being, a person that cares about other human beings, and I'm also a director and a writer, and those are the like my identity, the profession that I sort of put forward right now the most. So I don't know.
Well, that's good. That's good. Well, let me say, congrats on your debut of your film, The Seawall, at
Thank you.
Cannes Film Festival. Tell us about that experience at Cannes. I know it was in 2011, but tell us. We're
Thank, Thank you. Yeah. So my seawall, the seawall, the film was part of the Cannes Film Festival in 2011, and I must say, it wasn't official. It was not an official selection.
Mhm.
I had some fans who, from a newspaper article, corrected and said it wasn't in competition, which it wasn't. However, the film was selected to be part of a special screening in Cannes, and I was there for 2 weeks. It was to a great audience. A lot of people from all over the world were able to see a film made in Guyana by a Guyanese person with Guyanese people, and it was amazing. And for those who don't know about the story, the Seawall is what I call autofiction. It's not quite autobiographical. I wrote the story, the short story, about a boy who lives in GT in Georgetown with his grandmother, and he has a visa to move to America, to Brooklyn, to live with his mother. And it's about the separation between this grandmother and her grandson with leaving and separating, leaving Guyana, leaving the country, and going beyond the seawall. And if you're from Guyana or not, you may know that the seawall is this huge man-made structure that sort of separates Guyana from the rest of the world, from the Atlantic Ocean. And so the title is sort of like a metaphor for this family breaking apart and being divided by the seawall. And the story is very common for a lot of Guyanese people, since there are more Guyanese living outside of Guyana than in the actual country. I felt like I wanted to make a film that covers that. And it was really amazing to be in France and Cannes for 2 weeks, screening the film and talking to people from all over the world, who a lot of them didn't know about Guyana. They didn't know where it was. And what they did know was somewhat negative. I mean, people know Guyana for Jim Jones and that horrific incident that happened back in the 60s, I believe, the late 60s. And people confuse Guyana with Ghana in Africa, because a lot of people aren't aware that Guyana is the only English-speaking country in South America, and there are diverse nationalities there. You know, there is Afro-Guyanese, Indo-Guyanese, and different cultures, and Asian. And I think I felt like I was sort of an ambassador in France, educating people about Guyana and the culture. And so the film served that purpose. And that's why I'm really looking forward to making a longer version of the film to continue to serve that purpose of sort of sharing our story and telling our story of how we came about.
Well, I am looking forward to the longer version. I was, from the time I saw the clip from beginning to end, I was enthralled. You know,
Yeah.
the music in the background, the shots. I mean, it was beautiful. And the woman, this grandmother with her grandson, talking to him, I enjoy that. And it took me back to my childhood, because many of us came here, you know, when we were very young. I mean, I came here around 20, 21. But many people came here as children. And you spoke of like feeling like an ambassador. I was thinking about the same thing, is that here you are as an ambassador, where you can help through your filmmaking, through your interaction with your extended social graph outside of Guyana, to kind of like shift the perception of what Guyana is away from the negative, the Jim Jones and all these things. And it also reminded me of we will talk about this later on in the show, about something that you're planning to do with young people in Guyana. And I guess in that effort, you will be helping to shape and mold other young ambassadors as well. But
Yes.
since we're talking about childhood, I want to ask you this question: What books or stories did you enjoy as a child?
Well, I got to be honest with you, Selwyn. The sort of the birth of my imagination as a child began in Guyana, because if you're from Guyana or not, you know that we had occasional blackouts.
Right.
Or actually, it happened a lot.
Uh-huh.
And so during the blackouts, my mother and my father would always sit us around and tell stories.
Uh-huh.
And we don't know if these stories are made up or if they just made them up on the spot,
Right.
or if it's just like old Guyanese tales. But I remember being very young. I left Guyana when I was 7 years old.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember being very young and sitting in the blackouts and hearing all these amazing stories, and I think it developed my imagination. And so I was always an imaginative child.
That's good.
And so moving to Brooklyn, I think that continued, and I was always just a student that was into English and reading and writing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I loved it. And I think it just sort of naturally progressed into filmmaking.
Wonderful.
But I definitely think that being able to not sit in front of a television all the time,
right,
and have images put in front of me, but actually hearing stories developed my imagination in Guyana. And also, when I was a kid, every Tuesday night,
mm-hmm.
my father would take us to the Starlight Drive-In Theater. This is back in the day.
Yes.
It's right off the seawall, off the coast. And it was an outdoor amphitheater that used to play a lot of American movies and some black and white films. And that was something I looked forward to with the family. And so at a very, very young age, I just always knew that I was interested in being a storyteller, in reading and writing. And it just developed, I guess.
You know, a question formulated while you were saying this, and you spoke of being with the family and the family and the family. But I still wanted to ask this question: when you were growing up in Guyana, which adult? This might be unfair because you seem to have come from a strong family unit. But which adult you spent more of your time with, and how did they? If that's the case, how did they influence you?
That's a great question. Well, I definitely spent a lot of time with my mother. My parents were divorced when I was very young, and so I lived with my mother and my older brother and my sister. And so I was definitely closer to that side of my family. But I was also very close to my uncles and my grandfather, who I'm named after. And so I feel it was a good balance of people that I was close to. But I think, like they say with the boy, you're close to your mother, and the girls, you tend to be the favorite of your. Yeah. So I don't really have a.
That's good. And so what is your earliest memory of a film?
Pardon?
What is your earliest memory of a film, or which film? What's your earliest
of a film? Oh gosh. Okay. So I grew up in Campbellville, and I remember that the neighbor had somebody had a television, and they had a movie on, and I think it was Roots. I think it was Roots, and I remember looking and seeing, the African people, but not understanding what was going on. Right? So I think there was Roots, and then the most active memory I had was there's a film with Sidney Poitier called To Serve with Love. And that was my mother's favorite film. So she always would watch it, and I think I remember moving it to America and seeing it. And the thing that stood out to me was this character was so powerful. He was so intelligent, well-spoken, well-dressed black man. And then when he said, "I'm from Guyana," he said that in the film.
Right.
I just that opened a whole new world to me, because I realized, what the potential is for I saw someone like me on the big screen in a big way, and it just always stuck with me. Just that one scene when he said Diana.
It's interesting. I tell all my guests I love to follow the flow. I obey the flow. I believe in the flow. And you mentioned Sidney Poitier, right? And many young black filmmakers, not only black but especially young black filmmakers, they
right.
and actors, they always talk about Sidney Poitier and being influenced by him. You were introduced to him into Story with Love, and you followed the path of into filmmaking, and you have a master's degree in film and so on.
Mm-hmm.
When you came here and you got into this industry, did you continue to be inspired by Sidney, to look at him, to study his work? I mean, how did that affect you in any way?
I mean, absolutely. I mean, definitely Sidney Poitier was one of the first strong influences as a boy for me to get a sense of identity, and especially a sense of identity in cinema and in the world stage,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think a lot of people sort of glorify in a way and herald his image, which I think is worthy of it. But I think that once I started navigating through the film industry, I realized that there are other people that influenced me that are from different cultures and different backgrounds. So Sidney Poitier didn't lose this spot,
Right.
but I definitely realized that, based on the kind of films that I wanted to make and the sort of director and writer, the kind of works that I read, like I shifted. I mean, I went to Vanderbilt University, and I was an English major in the classics. So I studied, like Wordsworth and Romantics and Shakespeare and Donne and all these, very, very scholarly writers.
Mm-hmm.
And I think from that experience, I was able to just deduce my own narrative, my own story, right? To read these classic pieces,
Mm-hmm.
and being able to extract and realize what is missing, like what can I put into it. So I think definitely like being an English major and that having that formal education influenced my storytelling abilities.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what I always wanted to do was make it personal, like use that structure, right?
Mm-hmm.
And make the films personal and connected to what I know. So that's why I went back to Guyana when it became time to make a film that was my thesis. And I used all the tools. I used, the tools to my degree in English and reading and writing and growing up in Brooklyn, and I used the stories of my father and my mother, telling us stuff during the blackouts.
Mm-hmm.
And I used, my favorite filmmakers like Abbas Kiarostami, the Irani filmmaker, and Sajid Ray, the Indian filmmaker from India from the 50s. I used all of those things, and I put it together to craft my story, with my perspective. So I guess it all kind of influences each other. But Sidney Poitier is always going to be, I mean, that was the image. I mean, I have never seen a person of color, a man of color, representing himself that way, especially in that time.
Mm-hmm.
So that's always going to be a special place in my heart.
I like that. What I like especially about what I'm hearing right now is how you taking what you learn from the classics and from some of these great writers, the Shakespeare and all these guys, and trying to from that melee of literature, finding something within that you can call your own or create your own. And I like that. I like that creativity. But then also taking all of these pieces from these great filmmakers and so on, and putting it together and crafting a story called The Seawall. I love that. I wanted to ask you this question, Dong, but how did the name what made you think of The Seawall as a name for your first film?
For the film?
Yes.
Well, I'll give you a little bit of backstory, but I think you're dead on with that comment. So thank you for that. Initially the film was called. It had a different title.
Mm-hmm.
It was called Malachi's Wish, and Malachi is the name's character. And the like to add on to your point about taking all these experiences and trying to have it and tell a story that was personal and that was a human experience. I mean, it was a story about this boy and the human need for just understanding your place in the world, and the human need to stay connected to your family and find yourself, And I think that's a theme that you see in literature. And, like they say, storytelling is all recycled truths. It's all the same thing over and over again. So so the film was called Malachi's Wish, but I wanted to tell this universal story, of someone trying to find their identity and trying to connect to who they are and their roots, and make it very specific to Guyana. And I thought about, and this is after we shot in Guyana, it was called Malachi's Wish. We came back to Los Angeles, where I live, and we were editing the film. And then, I just felt like I wanted it to be specific to Guyana. And what is the biggest thing in Guyana that can be a metaphor for being in Guyana, being landlocked in Guyana? And I think the seawall just stood out to me. I mean, and then, and when I was writing the film, I went back to Guyana and I stayed at my grandmother's house, and every morning she would go for a walk on the seawall. Every single morning at 6 o'clock, she would go for a walk on the seawall every day and just look out. And, and she's older, and I would always think that, she's looking across the waters to everyone else. There's so many of us that left the country, right? And deal with that separation. So the title just it seemed like almost like a no-brainer. Like it just made sense during the editing process and thinking about getting a larger scope for the film. And I want the film to be the story of not just Guyanese immigrants, but people from all over the Caribbean, from Trinidad, Barbados, Belize, from everywhere that leave their country to go to, whether it's the U.S. or London or for a better life, but knowing that there's something beautiful in where you're from and where you began, where your identity sort of formed. So I guess the seawall was my way of making it a broader scope, if that makes any sense.
No, it makes a lot of sense. It's brilliant, especially the metaphor that has a little bit of sad undertone, is that people leave a place that they were born and they grew up in, and to go abroad in search of a better life, and those that are left behind. And I like what you said just about your grandmother taking a walk on the seawall, and you were definitely a storyteller, because you captivated my interest there, looking across the water to everybody, to those who have left, and she's there. I mean, that sense of loneliness is gripping. Wonderful. I mean, we expect to see much more from you, Mason. So what are some of your favorite American films, foreign films, or TV shows?
My favorite films. Well, I love. I tend to like. I went to a film school that was very artistic, very creative, and off the cuff. So I tend to like filmmakers that are not very popular. I love Abbas Kiarostami. He's an Iranian filmmaker, and he basically made films in his country, in Iran, about his country. And for many years, and it wasn't until recently he made his first film in America with a studio, I believe. But he made a film called Where's My Friend's Home? And it's just a little boy in his village, sort of through the narrative showing us where he's from. And I felt like it was such an insight into his world. And so that filmmaker influences me. Another one that influenced me is Sajid Ray. He's an Indian filmmaker from the 1950s that did films in his village in India. And there was always themes of trains passing through and older people, which sort of was a way of him sort of telling a story about sharing his story with the world. So I love those two filmmakers the most. But in terms of American filmmakers, I'm a fan of Darren Aronofsky, who did Requiem for a Dream. I'm a fan of earlier Spike Lee work. Growing up in Brooklyn, I loved his first work, She's Gotta Have It. I love Terrence Malick, who did The Tree of Life, which is sort of like this abstract sort of film, because I love magical realism as well. So I love any sort of Spanish cinema, and the list kind of goes on. Like it's hard to ask a filmmaker,
right,
what's your favorite film, because there's so many films that I like for different reasons. Yeah, so I guess that's the way I would answer that question.
I know you dove into it a little bit, but I'm going to ask you, tell us about your film education. Any significant lessons learned?
My film education?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I I got my master's in film. So Seawall is actually my thesis film. It was when I spent 3 years in film school in graduate school in Los Angeles, and you for your final and making films, like we start off making a 1 minute film, a 2 minute, like just short films, just to kind of practice, with shooting on film with the camera. And I learned everything technically about the film, from writing, screenwriting, how do you formulate a story, to what do you do on set, how do you light it, everything. And so I made several shorts. But so for your thesis, it has to be the story that's sort of like your opus, like the one thing you want to do. And I found that it was difficult for me to find what that story was, like what's the most important thing for me. And then, I mean, so actually, I don't know if I told you, but I didn't go back. Since I left Guyana at 7, I never went back until I made this film. So I started writing this film based on my memory, based on what I remember as a boy, like my grandmother's backyard and the flat, and then I went to Guyana for a month and stayed there and was able to finish the script. So the one lesson, to answer your question, that I learned is that in filmmaking and storytelling, it's really important to tell that personal truth for the character, to really have that narrative that's so unique to that person's experience, and tell that truth, because whatever that experience is truthful. And this is what I tell my mentees all the time. I mentor a couple of young kids in New York and LA, and I always tell them, you're writing your own narrative. Like, think of your life as you're writing your own narrative. What are you going to do? What are the choices you're going to make? Like, what's your script going to look like?
Right.
Where's your location? Where are you going to live? And I think in thinking about your life that way, as writing your own narrative, you sort of, you become the director, you become the person in charge of the story. And it's empowering, So that's the fundamental thing, like element, I think, that's important for storytelling as a film, is finding the truth of the character and really focusing on that, because I think ultimately it becomes universal, because we're all human beings trying to find something greater, right? And so, if you see a person going through an experience and trying to solve a problem, and try to discover something about themselves on a big screen, everyone can relate to that, because I think we all are always trying to do that,
right?
To figure out our story.
Miss, I don't know if I mentioned to you, I probably did, that this is a three-dimensional process. There's a chat room where the audience participates in the conversation through questions and comments.
Okay.
So I'm just going to go there for a bit. G says, happy birthday, Selwyn. Thank you, G. Barbara. Happy birthday, Selwyn Collins. Thank you. Alcat says, happy birthday, blessings to the soul of a legacy building the heritage of the Guyanese fabric. Much love, Cello. Thank you. Callie Mason, thank you for sharing your gift and genius of storytelling with us. What film school did you attend, and how did it uniquely prepare you for this time in your life? Hold that thought for a second. And Alcat said, does he think that he will reach the pinnacle of success that evades so many filmmakers of color, and does the independence of Tyler Perry mean it's not so unattainable? So let's take Callie's first. Mason, thank you for sharing your gift and genius of storytelling with us. What film school did you attend, and how did it uniquely prepare you for this time in your life?
Okay. Thanks for the question. I appreciate it. Thanks for tuning in. So I went to Cal Arts, and it's short for the California Institute of the Arts, and it's basically an art school, a film school, it's a music school in California, and it's a private school owned by the Disney family. So it's number one in the country, in the world, for animation. But I was part of the film directing program, which is fairly young. I mean, it's about under 15 years old, and it's a very, very small program. So it's very selective. I think there were 9 of us in the class. I mean, they select 9 to 12 people a year. So there's a lot of attention. So I think in terms of preparation, I think having the best resources that you can ask for in terms of a film school, like equipment and the best professors and a lot of attention, a lot of time. We had studios. I mean, it was the best resources. So that definitely prepared me to do the kind of work that I need to do, you know.
Okay. And the other question before we take a break, does he think that he will reach the pinnacle of success that evades so many filmmakers of color? And does the independence of Tyler Perry mean it is not so unattainable?
Well, what is the Tyler Perry part? I don't understand.
It
What?
says, does the independence of Tyler Perry mean it's not so unattainable? What is not unattainable is you reaching the pinnacle of success that evaded so many filmmaker of color.
I mean, I'm not sure I understand the question
I,
fully,
I
but
think I think I got it, but let me rephrase it. I think what they're asking is, and I hope if I'm wrong, they'll correct me. But no,
sorry.
no, not you. I think what they're saying is that what Tyler Perry has been able to accomplish,
Hmm.
right, sort of crushes the idea that um, reaching or attaining a pinnacle of success is almost impossible or improbable for for filmmaker of color. So, because of what Tyler Perry has been able to accomplish, do you think that you have a shot? How do you feel?
Oh, I can say. I mean, I think that everyone has their own destiny and their own path
Mm-hmm.
in life,
Yes.
and I think everyone has their own journey. And Tyler Perry started out with his dream to, to do theater, and he had a very specific audience, and he worked very, very hard on it. He worked, to build his audience, dealt with a lot of rejection, and he's carved out a niche for himself. So the one thing I would say about him, I support him in that he never gave up on what he wanted to do. And I mean, I live by that mantra. Like, I believe in what I love and what I want to do, and it makes me happy to pursue it. The pursuit of making a movie, if it's shooting, a short in Guyana or shooting something in Brooklyn, that's what I love to do. Like, I made a choice that that's what I love to do. And in terms of massive success, I mean, I think I applaud Tyler Perry. I think it's amazing, and I think that a lot of filmmakers wish for that. But I think when you look at it that way, it can sometimes cloud the work
Right.
and cloud, what it is you're after.
Well.
Um, but I think, I don't feel I don't feel like I'm in competition with Tyler Perry or with anyone else. I believe that, you're always in competition with yourself to do the very best
Mm-hmm.
you could do, and to, create the work that, you feel the most passionate about. So if anything, I also, I see there's hope.
Right.
There's hope for, you know, creating an audience for a film like a Tyler Perry film. The same way, like back in the '90s, when films like Love Jones came out, and Jason's Lyric, those types of films weren't out for people of color, and with those themes of love and romance and in the urban settings. And so, I think there's hope for a lot of things.
Right, right. And Alcat said, I'm not comparing him to Perry. I'm just asking if he thinks that Perry's success will help increase the opportunity to reach his pinnacle of success, not Perry's.
Oh, so that's the clarification.
Yes, that's a clarification.
Oh yeah, yeah. So I think I pretty much answered it. I
Yes,
hope
you did.
that,
You did.
yeah. Like,
So,
I'm a fan. Like, I've met him, in LA and briefly, and I support his work, and he's doing great big things,
mhm.
and he has a huge audience base. And I think the big thing that Tyler Perry does is that he understands his audience. He
Yes.
understands the people that like his film and who go to see his film, and he's able to market that. And with the Seawall, what's interesting is that I screened it a few times for Guyanese people and got a very strong reaction. With everything I've been doing to make the feature, like, I'm building that audience of people who want to see Guyana and see themselves and see a
Wonderful.
different type of narrative, on the screen.
I like that. Let's take a break.
Okay.
All right.
Selwyn, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. We're on a break.
Oh, okay. So we have an hour left, huh?
we, we are back. I'm Selwyn Collins of CWS. My guest tonight is Mason Richards. Mason, we're back. The question I want to ask is who are some of your favorite screen actors and what do you admire about their acting?
My favorite screen actors. Wow, that's a tough one.
Some. But you want us to skip this for a while and can come back to it later?
Someone asked me that before. I mean, there's just so many talented people out there. Seriously.
Right.
I mean, and just some really talented people. But I would say most recently, if to kind of narrow it down, and thinking about the films that are out, I loved Daniel Day-Lewis, who was in Lincoln. I thought it was a very, very good performance as an actor, right? In terms of choices as an actor. I also love, this is a newcomer to the scene, Condola Rashad. She's Felicia Rashad's, who's a Cosby Show, the mom, her daughter.
Yes.
Who is just amazing because she went to Cal Arts, not because of that with me, but she has the ability to do theater. She's on Broadway right now, doing a Broadway show with Cicely Tyson and with Cuba Gooding Jr. And then she's also been able to transition and do television and film and just really talented. There's so many people.
Let's go to the other one. That I'm thinking about. What are some of the techniques that should some aspiring young actors? Let's say you select one of these actors, not necessarily your favorite, but a good actor or actress, and you were teaching some class. What are some of the techniques you think some young aspiring screen actors should study?
For young aspiring actors, I would say the number one thing I would say is to be willing to do the work and understand what your type is, like understand where you can fit in, understand what your gift is, understand the one thing that makes you stand out, that makes you unique, right? Because I think that's sort of the beginning. And then the second thing is be able to do the work. Like it doesn't, you have to, you can be attractive, or you can be charming, you can be witty, but you have to be able to look at a script and be able to understand a scene and break it down and get in there.
I got you.
And that's why I respect people who have theater training, people who understand who they are and be able to just do the work, basically.
Which brings me to my next question. How would you describe your filmmaking process, and what distinguishes your approach?
That's a great question. I mean, directors have different sort of focuses, right? And I think I would classify myself as an actor's director, right? And an actor's director is a director on film. You focus on all the technical stuff, the camera, the lighting, the composition, the framing, everything, which I know and I love, and that's natural. But I have a special place in my heart for my actors on set. Like I like to take care of them and make sure they're understanding the scene and the material, because at the end of the day, that's what people see. Audience won't be aware of the light or what's off. They'll be aware that I connect with that person. And I think it's that way because I started out when I was growing up in Brooklyn. I was a child actor. I got started up in a theater company called the City Kids Repertory Company, based in Manhattan, and we basically wrote and performed shows about themes relevant to young people, and in high schools and prisons, wherever we can, and I did commercials and stuff like that. So I sort of like fell into acting, and it wasn't until I went to college that I realized, oh, I think I'm better suited behind the camera as a director, but I still have an affinity, for acting and understanding what actors go through and how to work with them, etc.
So that speaks to what you said earlier. Know your gift.
Know your gift. Know your gift. Just know your gift.
The chat room. Let me go into the chat room. Alcat said he has an audience with the seawall. Does he think it brings him a niche?
Pardon?
Alcat said he has an audience with the seawall. Does he think it brings him a niche?
Do I think it brings in the money?
No, a niche.
I'm sorry.
Does he think it brings him a niche? NICHE.
I don't understand. I'm sorry, I'm trouble hearing the last part of it. Bring me
a niche, like how Tyler Perry has his own niche.
Like a niche?
Yes,
the audience for the seawall. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's a great question. That's a great question. I think it might be too soon to even to note that, because my goal is to make this first film, and it is in Guyana, so it's sort of a niche. But I think the niche would be, if anything, would be that when I like working with non-actors and actors at the same time. Like in the Seawall, I had people who weren't actors at all, and was able to direct them without a script to be authentic. And I realized for the feature, I want to do the same thing, but I will also want to have trained professional actors working alongside with them. And I think that's something I like. I like that formula for other work that I do. But in terms of a niche, I think it's too soon. I mean, I have another film that I'm working on that it takes place in Brooklyn. It's an urban story, coming of age story of a kid growing up in New York. So maybe I don't know. I think it's too soon. I don't know.
Well, Joan said, "Congrats on your success. How does one get a film to Cannes Film Festival? Did it help to have graduated from the top film school?"
Is that Joan that said that?
Yes.
Thanks, Joan. That's a great question. Well, I think it does help. I think that it takes a combination of things to be able to get into a great festival. And I think going to a good school, having a great film, I think having connections, I think all that stuff helps. It does. But there's no formula for success in the film industry. It's so unpredictable. I mean, someone can make a film on a home camera in their house, and if it's brilliant and people like it, it'll get somewhere. So
right.
I don't know that there are different ways to get there.
Well, Barbara said, "Mason, love the energy that is coming from you. I know you'll be well known for the amazing storytelling waiting to come through you. So glad you're present. So proud you're Guyanese." And Joan asked, "Have you had any companies interested in distributing the Seawall?"
That's a great question. Yeah, I actually chose to go with. I've had a few people interested in distributing the Seawall it's a short film, so it's 9 minutes, but distributing it for online. And I went with a company that's started by a Guyanese woman. The company is called Annecy Studios. And after next week, after April 6th, the film will be available online, so people can stream it. You can pay a fee and screen the film.
Oh, that's
so
wonderful.
I went with a distribution company that is rooted in my community, so that we're keeping it in the family.
Excuse me. Linda asked, "What surprised you about making the Seawall?" And it kind of there's a question I had scribbled down here somewhere. I wanted to ask you about it. This is a question I want to ask you. When dealing with such an emotional subject, is it hard to make executive decisions in the editing room
Oh, that's a good question. Um, I, I mean, it is and it isn't. I mean, you always have to go with your instinct and your gut,
Mm-hmm.
and go with what is the quickest way to get to the truth, right? Because I think when people see the truth in front of them, when you see something that's, it may make you feel uncomfortable or some strange way, but if it's the truth, you can hear people say, mm-hmm. Like for example, like when I screened the film The Seawall for a Guyanese audience, almost entirely Guyanese in DC
Uh-huh.
a while back, you can hear the people, different generations saying, mm-hmm, yeah, because they know you, they just relate, they just get it, you know.
Right, right.
So in editing, you think about what is the quickest way to sort of cut to the truth, and so making decisions for me is it's about what can I be the most on, on point with that it with.
So let's take Linda's question. What surprised you about making the seawall?
What surprised me?
Uh-huh.
Um, a number of things. Well, I was surprised that when I went to Guyana, that I didn't have the support that I needed to make the film. I mean, I thought because I didn't really, no one really knew what was going on in making a movie, and so I was kind of surprised that I wasn't able to get the support from Guyanese people in Guyana, and so I had to I had to find it. So part of what I did was and also, so and also the University of Guyana. I went to them for support as well, and they just didn't have people um, who had enough film experience, or they didn't have a camera at the time or anything to help. So that surprised me. So what that encouraged me to do was I found kids in Guyana on the street, and with my crew, I told them I'm making a movie about Georgetown, and I want to teach you. I want you to help me. And so I sort of taught these kids that were just hanging out to be part of the production. And I also got a couple of students from the University of Guyana to be part of the crew, and taught them that. And so I felt like it was just surprising that people, like, they, you hear about movies, but there wasn't like a culture, a film culture. People are interested in making it. At least I didn't see that when I was there. So that's one of the things that surprised me.
Well, Mason,
Then, yeah.
you've just given me a brilliant transition into a topic I want you to talk about. Talking about surprise and talking about the University of Guyana. You have a project that you're working on where you want to teach filmmaking to young Guyanese. Could you elaborate on that? Could you tell us a little bit about what that is about?
Yes, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I feel like, I've always had in my life, I've always had people supporting me. Um, since I was very young, I've always had mentors, whether it was a teacher in school, or, an after school program, whether I was in a theater program. There was always an adult or someone that, apart from my family, they were amazing support, but just someone who was a mentor in every step of my career, when I worked at the studio, when I at film school. And so I feel like it's important for young people to have a mentor, and not just someone who will um, just give them financial support or pay for a scholarship, but someone who will actually be there, like, for them. So I came up with the idea to do a Mason Richards Film Fellowship for students at the University of Guyana, where I would personally mentor a few students on film production, on just what the process is of making a film, and making a film not just in Guyana but also in America.
Mm-hmm.
So we're still figuring out the details of the fellowship, but it definitely would be some sort of stipend, and it would be an opportunity to get real solid advice and mentoring from my behalf.
Mm-hmm.
And part of it is to tie it in line with when we shoot the feature production. We're still raising the funds, but when we shoot the feature production of the Seawall in Guyana, those fellows, those students, will be able to be part of of the production team and have that credit, legitimate credit, in being part of a film shot in their country, in their town.
Like that. In the chat room, Alcat, that's a fantastic niche to create with professional and the non-professional. I support your success to come. Thank you for sharing your talent and art. And Alcat, again, are you planning to do a resource to EA? Do a resource. Let me just read it, and I can fill in the blanks. Are you planning to do a resource to the film industry in Guyana, having experience? Oh, okay. Alcat, what a resource to be a re? Are you planning to be a resource
for people in Guyana
to the film industry in Guyana, having experienced those surprises when they yes, are you planning to be a resource for them?
Absolutely, yeah, I want to. I mean, I feel like I didn't when I went there, I didn't. It's hard, like I didn't know there was people interested in film, but I found I won an award in New York from the Guyanese consulate in New York, and they gave it to a few Guyanese people that have succeeded in different fields, a lot of scientists and doctors, and so I was proud to be part of the artist, component where they're acknowledging creative people in Guyana. So but on that award list, there was a retired pilot, Mike Charles. Some of you may have heard of him because he does if he does films of Guyana, but more like documentary, just about the natural resources. He does a lot of aerial shots and explores, the culture in that way. And he's been making these films for a while. And so I wanted to connect with someone like that and say, look, it'd be great if we can join forces where I could use some of that beautiful footage and show people Kaitra Falls and go into the interiors and, show people all the exotic birds and all the stuff in Guyana that people don't know about, combined with the narrative that I have. I mean, I think that's a powerful alliance.
I agree.
So, we're talking about that, and also I think lately, since the film has been getting all the success it's been getting, I'm now meeting a lot of Guyanese photographers and filmmakers, people who just there isn't a strong network to connect. So I definitely want to be part of that.
Wonderful.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. What I especially like about what you were saying earlier on is how resourceful you are. Is that you got there to do this film and you discovered that there was an absence of resources, and yet you didn't give up. You did mention earlier you don't believe in giving up. You took some young kids off the street and taught them, and I like that. Linda said, thank you for the Mason Richards Film Festival at UG. Sorry. I messed up there. Thank you for the Mason Richards Film Fellowship at UG. Such an amazing opportunity for those students apprenticing from a fellow Guyanese. And before I take another break, Mason, what was the first piece of footage you used in this film, and was it significance? What is its significance to your upbringing?
The first
piece of footage that you used in the film.
That I shot, or that's in the film.
That's in the film. That's in the film. Not that you shot, but that's in the film. And was it of any significance to your upbringing?
I mean, I think every shot. I think all of it is.
Gotcha.
I mean, the one, all of it is. But the one thing that stood out to me was the opening shot, because it's basically the seawall, and it's the world beyond Guyana.
Yeah.
And I think that was like as a kid, I think I knew I would miss that. I felt like we were going there, and then I would miss that the most. So just the actual coastline of Guyana, but then also there's a scene where the grandmother's preparing food. She's chopping up callaloo, and she's washing the fish and washing rice and cleaning fish, and just being in the kitchen and being around Guyanese food, and it's all that love. Like that was another amazing memory and an amazing shot. Like I love that whole sequence, and it was hard to not have all of that in the film. But I knew people would be bored watching someone, make some, fish and rice. But definitely that was one of my favorites.
So Linda said, FYI for the audience, Cell has a clip of the seawall on CWS website. It's indeed fantastic. Alcat said, fantastic being a resource. Enjoy the clip on CWS. And Alcat, please post the address. Well, actually, they're here on CWS. I'm losing my mind. Mason, let's take a break and continue when we get back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
وصليا يا إلهي وسيا أبدا أن محمدنا مختار بالخدم وصليا يا إلهي وسيا.
We are back. I'm Selwyn Collins of CWS. Our guest tonight is Mason Richards. And Mason, there you are. Linda said, go to homepage after the interview or during the breaks. So I have a question. What was what do you consider the elements of a good film or a great film?
The elements of a great film?
Yeah.
I would say definitely having a great story, an interesting story that is unique, and having really strong multi-dimensional characters.
Wonderful.
Having characters that have to solve a problem where there's a connection to them, and where you feel like the audience will feel like there's a connection to it.
And which leads me into what sort of technical and entertainment elements do you consider when watching a film?
Technical? That's a big one for me. I say this to new filmmakers and aspiring filmmakers, is that the technology has changed, right? Where anyone can get a camera and you can shoot anything for not a lot of money. But it's really important to understand just the technicality of it, because it just makes the film easier to watch if you understand where the lighting is and what it means to compose a frame and that kind of stuff. And I think that the film industry is tougher now to sort of get anything made because it's so competitive, because anyone can make a film. So you have to be even more tenacious about being a craftsman, a filmmaker, where you find unique ways to tell your story, whether it's finding a great location or finding using something different with the light, or finding something different with the lens, or choosing a different kind of whatever. But you have to find. I feel like we have to always think of new ways technically to sort of do the same thing. Like we said, it's recycling the truth. It's the same thing over and over again. That's what.
And you have that tenacity, Mason.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I'm a fighter. Like I'm into just once I have my mind set on something, I feel like I have to keep going. Like what's the alternative?
When someone tells me that they are tenacious and I think of tenacity, I always think of, well, tenacity coming from the gut, and I think of one of those old iron stove with a fire in the belly. So I'm going to ask you this using that metaphor: what ignites your fire? What makes you tenacious?
What makes me tenacious?
Mm-hmm. What keeps you, you get a challenge, you're like, no, I have to accomplish this. I have to overcome this. What drives you?
That's a tough question. It's a great question. I think tenacity is something that you have to kind of, like the fire in the belly.
Yes.
It's something you have to harness,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like when you see a fire, you got to put wood in it to keep it burning and
Right.
to keep it going, to keep it warm. If there's a cold room, you got to add more wood, right? And I think, like my tenacity just comes from because you get a little taste of success,
Right,
you want
right.
to enjoy that warm room, right? So I just love being working with actors, and I love being on set. I love being able to just, have people together and have fun and tell a story. And I love being in a theater and sitting in the audience and watching the audience just sort of have an experience based on something you created. I fight for that, and I love it.
That you mentioned actors. I'm going to ask Kali's question in the chat room before mine.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, I may have missed it. Were all the actors in the seawall experienced or not? They seem so natural, as if witnessing people we know very well.
Mm-hmm.
Were they all actors? Experienced actors?
No, the actors in the short film in the Seawall they're non-actors.
Wow.
So I wrote the script,
Mm-hmm.
and then I was in the market, in Border Market in Georgetown, and I saw this little boy running down the street barefoot, just running around. I was like, that's the kid.
Wow.
That kid needs to be in the movie. So, but then I couldn't find him. He just was all over the place. And then the woman, Marjorie, she's my mother's best friend. She's a retired school teacher, and she's just naturally charismatic and great. So the funny thing is that same afternoon, that little boy that I saw in the market, Malachi, came by the house.
Wow.
In Kitty. And that's Marjorie's godson.
Ah.
So they knew each other.
Wow.
So I was like, perfect. It was divine intervention. I don't know. It just worked out that way.
Everything just lined up for you, Mason.
It just worked out that way. I don't know. I got lucky.
And this is good. A good setup for the question that I postponed, which is, how do you know when you have the right shot?
How do I know when I have the right shot?
Mm-hmm.
It's two things. It's when the way I imagined it, my vision of it, lines up with what I see.
Oh.
In the frame, in the actual camera.
Gotcha.
Because before, like most of the shots in the film, I've already thought of it. Like like the last scene in Seawall with the mosquito net, with the blue, that's how I felt as a kid sleeping in bed. So I knew I wanted it to be blue. I wanted this net to be a certain way, and so I knew what it looked like in my visual mind.
Mm-hmm.
And I told my DP, my camera director of photography, this is what I want. And so when he showed me the options, I was like, that's it. So I know because it's in my imagination, and I think about it before I see it in the lens, and then I decide, oh, that's it. Or if it's not, I'm like, oh no, we need to try something else, because what's in my imagination is not lining up with what I see in the actual camera.
Which makes the next question appropriate. What's the secret to assembling a cast to bring out the special magic of a film?
The secret to
assembling a cast to bring out the special magic of a film.
It's all about chemistry.
Chemistry.
It's all about chemistry. It's like relationships, and like some people get along better than others. Some people don't, but it's just finding the right balance of their energy. Like, because the camera picks up everything, right? Mm-hmm. So even the subtleties, and it's even better picking up the subtleties. So if if two people have some sort of kismic, some kind of energy, rapport, and you see it, like that's golden. That I mean, that you want that on the screen. At least for me, for the when I think about casting.
And Kali said, a wonderful example of asking for what you want and having it be manifested. You are indeed blessed, Mason. So know that the feature film already is. And so the next question, what's your favorite genre? What else do you have planned for the future?
Well, thank you for that comment. That's really good. It's really good to hear people saying positive things. You know, I think it's didactic. I think art is didactic. Like as much as I give myself through my art, my films, like I love to hear good things from people as well. Anyway, so my favorite genre, I definitely am more drawn to uh, dramas, like serious narratives. I don't know.
Why?
I, I don't know, because I just love cinematic story. I love like cinematic, broad storytelling, like big themes, that kind of stuff. So I'm actually working on another project that I'm really excited about. This is after Seawall, and it's not in Guyana. It's an American project, and it's a novel. So I'm adapting a novel into a film because I love the maybe because my background is in English literature and writing, but I love long, like epic sort of big stories, big themes, dramatic themes.
So I guess you will need a lot of funding then.
Pardon?
You will need a lot of funding for that.
Oh yeah, I mean big time.
which gives me an opportunity to ask you about that. What was it you got? That award you got? That 10,000 from Sony. What was it? Sony
Pictures.
Sony
the
Pictures.
Fellowship?
Yes. What was? Tell us a bit about that, Mason. What was that about? Mm-hmm.
Well, it's the anniversary, Selwyn, today. So this is a year. I think a year ago today, I won the Sony Fellowship.
Wow.
And it was an amazing night. Basically, I was part of a program called Project Involve through a non-for-profit called Film Independent, and they basically identify new filmmakers and pair you up with a mentor and just give you all these resources and to make your own film. And I think there are about 20 people in that Film Independent class they select every year, called Project Involved. And from that program, they choose one person to win a fellowship based on your work, based on a number of factors, and it comes with a $10,000 check to go towards any production you're working on, and a year of mentoring with a Sony executive.
Oh, that's nice.
And so that was major for me because it was just such a great resource to be able to connect with Devon Franklin, who is the senior vice president of production at Sony Pictures, he did Jumping the Broom. He worked with Will Smith on the Karate Kid, like a bunch of films with Sony, and it was able to have someone that that involved in that experience be my guide. And I think what it does is that it gives you legitimacy as you starting out in the business, so people will invest in you,
right?
Because it's a lot of money to make a film, as we know, and so the more sort of laurels you have and experience, people are more likely to invest money.
So Mason, out of the 20 people, you were selected,
yes.
and I'm sure you were ecstatic and appreciative. What made you? What do you think made you stand out, or made you why did you think you stood out more?
Well, I asked Devon Franklin that why he selected me, and he said that the combination of my experience and this me being personal, like the stories and being personally connected to the stories, is what was interesting to them.
I like
because and I just and I'm the kind of person where I have to be myself and I have to tell things the way I see it because I feel like it's valid for me, and so I think those were the things that I don't know what the criteria they used, but it was based on that.
So DSACB said, Mason, clearly your work is naturally intelligent and you are beautifully articulate. You know your gift. My very best to you.
Wow, thank you. That's very nice. Very kind. Thank you.
And the question: any special effects in your film, The Seawall, and how did you do that?
None.
None.
Because we didn't have any money. We didn't we
You're resourceful, my brother. You are.
nothing.
You
I mean,
are.
we because we couldn't fly lights into Guyana. We flew into Trinidad and we couldn't bring any heavy equipment and lights. We made the film with all natural light, so it was all daylight. And I wrote the script that way to save money. But then there's only one shot in the film that we used the light. That was the last scene where it's blue because when you have exterior light, it makes it blue. But that was the only light or any kind of effect. Everything else we had to just wait until the light was perfect to shoot, which
Oh,
made the days the long for the actors. But and when it would in Guyana it would just rain at a
right.
random moment. We had to stop and wait till it cleared up, and sometimes we just went with it. So there were no effects. It was all real time, like documentary style.
Mason. What I'm hearing also is not only resourcefulness. I'm hearing patience. I'm hearing determination. These are some wonderful quality. I personally, I'm going to say this, that whoever get chosen to be part of that fellowship will be very, very fortunate and blessed to have you mentor them. Really, seriously. And I'm just enthralled sitting here listening to you. What can you tell us about the Caribbean Tales or the Toronto Film Festival?
Oh, the Caribbean Tales. I missed the other screenings of the
Oh,
film. I was
oh,
only able to go to France, but I missed the Caribbean Film Corner. They screamed the Seawall in London, and then also in the Caribbean Tales in Barbados, I believe. So I didn't get the chance to attend, but I did receive some messages from people that saw the film that were pretty pleased with it. So that's always a good feeling.
we hear so much about Cannes and being at Cannes and so on. What was it like being around such an esteemed group of filmmakers and so on while you were at Cannes?
Being at Cannes was amazing because it's a festival of filmmakers and film enthusiasts. So everyone that's there,
Mm-hmm.
in the French, in the South, in the Riviera, like they care about film. So for me, as my first film, my thesis film, just to be part of it,
Right.
not even in a huge part of it, but just a part of it was amazing. And I think what I got from it was I became more inspired.
Uh-huh.
I saw so many films I was there for 2 weeks. I saw so many great films from all over the world, from
Wow.
Africa, Sweden, Denmark, Trinidad, everywhere. And I was the only Guyanese film there,
Wow.
but I was really excited to just see, and if you've been to the in Cannes, the French Riviera, it's probably one of the most beautiful sights in ever.
Miss,
So I was just like, I motivated me. I was like, I want this. I, I want. Why can't my film be here? Why can't
nice,
why
nice.
can't a Guyanese filmmaker be
I like that. I like
with a
that.
feature film there?
Yes, yes, I like that. Kali said, okay, please know that this is being said with much love. While
Hmm.
you look chronologically young, you're quite experienced and wise. Your energy and passion are infectious. You are phenomenal. And
Wow.
Alcat said, wow, that opportunity is exceptional. There are great things ahead for your career. You have a niche audience here with us on CWS. We got your back, Bono.
Nice, Bana. I like to hear that. I like having the Guyanese support.
Yes,
And
yes.
it's been coming from a lot of places. I'm really happy. Like the ambassador, Karen, and a bunch of other people have just been really supportive, which is really great.
Well,
It was really good to come back to New York because I live in Los Angeles, so it was great to come back to New York, to Brooklyn, and just see where there are more Guyanese people and meet them and realize, oh, okay, because I didn't know what was happening with the film
right.
living in LA.
Well, Mason, you're
So
part.
was there a question in there somewhere?
No, no, no. These are just compliments. I just want to say this, right? That you're part of CWS family now. So
Yes. Right.
we have we have a kind of an extensive social graph. So we're gonna do whatever we can to help the seawall be promoted. Right. So
Great.
takes me by. I don't want to take a break, Mason. Time is almost up, and I have several questions I really want to ask you.
Okay.
How did you control costs to make this film?
The short film?
Yes.
How did I come up make the
How did
cost?
you control costs?
You mean the running the budget?
Yes, that, sir.
Well, basically, we just had to be smart and be resourceful and just realize what we absolutely can spend money on. So we had to spend it, and I was very tenacious about getting donations and getting people to donate stuff. Like, I mean, I went to one of the best sound places in Hollywood and told them about the film, told them I was Guyanese, told them I'm going to Guyana to make this film, and I don't have any sound equipment, and it costs $10,000, but I really would love it if they would just lend me the equipment, and I'll bring it back in good shape. And they gave it to me.
Wow.
Coffee Sound. I mean, that was great, you know. And then, so we were able to cut down the cost of that, of sound equipment. You know, I found a DP that had a camera. You know, when I was in Guyana, my family, my cousins hadn't seen. You know, they all helped. My mom came down to Guyana, was helping. So it, you know, was able to do it. That was a community process, you know, and I had to get donations and help where I can. And which brings me to a place where I'm now with you know, trying to work on a feature. Because it's a longer film, a lot of those favors won't go as far. So you need to have generous donors and people who really want to be a part of the process and who can, you know, donate, you know, a fairly substantial amount of money as an investment to be part of something greater.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been very fortunate to partner up with a fiscal sponsor. It's an amazing organization based in Washington, D.C., and they're all ex-Peace Corps volunteers. Most of them are Caucasian, non-Guyanese Americans who lived in Guyana for working with the Peace Corps. And when they left, they started this organization called Friends and Returned Peace Corps Volunteers of Guyana, and the acronym is called FROG. And they basically do fundraisers in America and help programs in Guyana. So I partnered up with them, and they lent me their tax ID so people can make donations to their organization, so they can get a tax break, and I'm able to use those funds to make my film. So everyone wins. You know, you make an investment, you get a tax credit.
I like that.
And some art gets done.
You know. Again, Mason, this speaks to your resourcefulness. And I'm sitting here thinking I've never heard of this organization, and so in some way I must reach out to them to, I guess, to come on CWS at some point to talk about what they're doing and, you know, who they are and so on.
Yes, you got to check them out. It's www.guyfrog.org, guyfrog.org, and they're basically just amazing, and they're helping me with, you know, most of everything with the film.
Guyfrog.org. Okay. The SACB said, "Does anyone know what happened to the Guyana Film Center? I am surprised that institution seems non-existent." Kali said, "Friends and Returned Peace Corps Volunteer of Guyana Frog," right? And okay, Kali just posted www.guyfrog.org. I'm going to ask some rapid questions, Mason. What other films have you made?
What other films have I made?
Yes.
I made one last year in LA called Garcia's Guest, and it was a short. My first film that I used, it was bilingual. It's both Spanish and English, and it's about a Mexican gardener who lives in Los Angeles, who lives alone, misses his homeland in Mexico, and sees strange things happening. It's sort of like a sci-fi, magical, realistic kind of short film. Yeah.
Nice.
So I've done that, and a few others, very short.
Okay. Is there somewhere we can see that?
That one, it hasn't been released yet, but you can check out my website and find out more information on it.
Okay, cool.
At Marva Productions.
What is how you spell Marva?
Marva is Maurva.
Maurva Productions.com.
Marva Productions, and that's my company that I started. Marva is a Guyanese name. It's my mom's middle name, and I I thought it would be interesting to to name my company after that, since I was her first production. I don't know. I don't know why, but it's.
Kali just posted marvelsproductions.com. We have a family here.
That's good. I'm
Mason.
glad to be part of the family.
Have you ever directed relatives in one of your films? How was that experience, if you did?
I have not directed relatives.
You have not. Have you planned to?
Possibly. I think I directed my cousin with extras, but no, I don't know. That might be. That's a great question.
You better not.
You have to figure. There might be different dynamics. You got to figure that out. But no, not yet.
Oh gosh! As a writer and director, what other art forms interest you?
Other art forms as a writer director. I love. I think I love cooking. And that's strange, right? But a lot of chefs tend to be artists, you know,
Yes.
and like, and so because it has to do with like I love like gourmet cooking, so it's like thinking of a plate and thinking about combinations of food and colors and stuff like that. That's something I do to kind of relax when I'm stressed out. I try to get some some curry or whatever it is. If I'm feeling Guyanese or American I'll just try to put together a nice meal.
See, the brother hasn't forgotten his roots. Alcat said, "We got your back. Thanks for the links, Kali." So I'm going to ask you some rapid questions here, right? See how fast you can answer them. Describe a typical day in your life.
A typical day. No day is typical. It's all different. But what's consistent is that I try to get up every day and be thankful for what I have and try to end it the same way.
Love that. What is your favorite place to view a film?
Favorite place to view a film? I love viewing a film in a theater by myself. I love small movie theaters. There's some in LA.
Okay. Is there a special reason for that? I mean, the privacy, the quiet. What was it about a small theater that
I don't know. I think you get to sort of connect more, and you get to look at everything a little bit different. I love seeing films with a lot of people too, but my favorite is like on a rainy day, just kind of going to a theater and where it's not too crowded, a matinee, and just kind of watch a film. So I love going to BAM in Brooklyn. The BAM Cinema is awesome, and also in LA, like the Sunset 5 theater is really great.
Mason, you're bringing back memories. That used to be one of my favorite pastimes as a child. Get away and go to the movie by myself.
Yeah.
So I love that. I still love the movies, by the way. I still do. Where are you finding ideas for your work these days?
Pardon?
The question.
Ideas for work. I mean, it's all through just watching people, just being around people, and trying to be as human as I can. And just watching people around me and people's instincts, and just thinking what's important and what's valuable to put on a big screen.
What's your filmmaking pet peeve?
My technique?
No, pet peeve. Your film.
Pet peeve. I think not having a focus for the story and what's important. Like people, when you just shoot stuff to make it look great. Like you have great shots, but it doesn't make any sense in terms of what the story is and what the purpose of the character is, and it doesn't move the story forward. So that would be a pet peeve, I guess.
These fellows of the fellowship are going to be fortunate, Mason. You're a brilliant guy. What makes you laugh?
I guess I seem serious. I just like like everybody else, when you're sort of I think I'm somewhat of a overachiever and a workaholic. So I think being able to be around like really great friends who are able to just see the fun side of everything, and just like being around family and silliness and jokes, like that makes me laugh. Like being able to be carefree and that kind of stuff.
Kali said, "Thank you, Mason and Sel. This has been a wonderfully intellectually stimulating and entertaining conversation." And DSACB just said your name, Mason. Well, I have two more questions, Mason. One,
okay.
and this one, I'm asking this one because I know you're in the film industry. You deal with personalities, you deal with people, you have to direct them. it is hard to believe that you don't use an expletive, whether it's internal or external. So I'm going to ask this question. Do you have a favorite? Well, forget the expletive, the British word. I'm going to say cuss. Do you have a favorite cuss word?
A favorite cuss word?
Yes. Not necessarily
is
that
you... Is this like a...
No, I'm not going to ask you to say it, but do you have one when you get frustrated and angry? Do you have one that you say in your head that kind of like, takes you somewhere?
I guess everybody does. Yeah, I guess I do. Yeah.
I'm not going to ask you to repeat it. And then Alcat said, thanks for giving us your time and a look at your passion, Mason. You have a supporter in me. Alcat, you're typing very fast, but Alcat really says that you have a supporter in her or him. I don't know if it's a male or female. Joan said, it's been a yummy conversation. Thank you, Mason. Cello, this has been a great way to celebrate your birthday, doing what you love. Thank you, Joan. The SACB said, Mason, brilliant program, and I thoroughly enjoyed listening. Congratulations. G said, awesome and exciting conversation. Thank you, Mason. You did it again, Selwyn. Thank you, G. Alcat says, Alcat says fun, said fun. So let me see. Mason, you have a fan and a support in me. Thank you both. And DSACB, happy birthday, Cell. Thank you, DSACB. So Mason, I ask all my guests this, and you're not going to escape. Give us a few words of advice or wisdom or something to, close the show.
To close the show?
Yes.
Well, I guess to kind of stick with the theme.
Yes.
Is, as a writer, as a filmmaker, is always think about your own narrative in life. Like, how would you write your own story, as the director, as the writer, as the person casting it. And I think making those choices, like knowing that you have the power to be anything you want to be, to do whatever you want to do, how would you write your narrative? So I guess I would lead with a question as opposed to a statement. How would you write your own narrative?
I like that.
Life?
I like that.
Yeah.
How would you write your narrative? So we are all directors.
Yes.
Wonderful. Mason, my brother, welcome to the family of CWS. You're
Thank
part
you
of
very
us.
much.
Thank you for being here, and thank you for spending the time. I hope it wasn't too long for you.
That was quick.
You see what I mean? I told you.
I thought it was going to be long. It was quick.
We enjoy you. So good night, and take care.
Thank you. Good night.
All right. Bye-bye.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.